A number of Republicans have denounced your statement on Truth Social after the murder of Rob Reiner.
Hello, folks, and welcome back. This clip features Donald Trump, a news host, and commentators reacting to Trump's Truth Social post after the brutal murder of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle. The core issue is very simple: empathy versus ego. And on that front, Trump, of course, loses badly. This is a breakdown of the hypocrisy, moral collapse, and double standards on full display. And as a reminder and a favor, please like and subscribe to our channel. Now let's find the real truth.
Do you stand by that post?
Well, I wasn't a fan of his at all. He was a deranged person as far as Trump is concerned, Trump derangement syndrome. So I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all in any way, shape, or form. I thought he was very bad for our country, yeah.
Okay, let's slow it down for a second. Let's be blunt. A political figure is murdered in a gruesome, shocking way, and the President of the United States responds not with condolences, but with spite, mockery, and self-obsession? Are you for real? That's not telling it like it is. That's moral bankruptcy. Trump's response wasn't neutral. It wasn't restrained. It wasn't even political at all. It was personal, vindictive, and dehumanizing, all while hiding behind the lazy insult of Trump derangement syndrome. Is that even a term that's real? That phrase isn't an argument, it's a deflection used to avoid accountability. This is where the audience should stop and absorb the coldness. A man is dead, his wife is dead, and the president opens with, "I didn't like him." Really? That tells you everything about the mindset driving his response in our president.
Lovely things to say when you know what really happened in California last night. Last night was reported that critically acclaimed filmmaker and actor Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle Singer Reiner were found stabbed to death in their LA home on Sunday afternoon. And instead of offering condolences, as you just heard, President Trump decided to say they were murdered because of Rob's Trump derangement syndrome. Cenk, before we get into this, what are your 2 cents?
I think Rob Reiner was among the best of us. I thought he was a wonderful human being. And the president's sick. There's something wrong with him. Who says things like that after a person dies? And Rob Reiner was political in the sense that he cared about the country. And I want to talk more about that when I get out of how he cared and why you should love him whether you're on the left or the right. But he wasn't a political figure. He wasn't a politician who sent people to war or tortured anyone or anything like that. To have this kind of vitriol because he criticized you from time to time after he was killed in a horrific fashion, the man has no empathy at all.
This line lands because it's not rhetoric. It's evidence-based. Empathy is tested in moments like this. Trump, he failed this test publicly, completely. The segment smartly contrasts Trump's post with Melania Trump's Be Best initiative. Calls for being civil, being respectful, and being decent online. The irony is brutal. The call is coming from inside the White House, and the example set by the president undercuts his own administration message completely. You don't get to preach civility while modeling cruelty. That's ranking hypocrisy, and it's flat out being mean and rude.
And people with no empathy are generally monsters. All right, let's give you the facts of the case. It is absolutely tragic.
Yeah. Archie Bunker would have cried over this. That's all you need to know, right?
Yeah, and Trump was worse than Archie Bunker.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
So let's keep in mind, before we really get into this, the investigation into the Reiner's death is still ongoing, but People magazine released a shocking report last night stating the 2 were allegedly killed by their son, Nick. And the report that you see there was later confirmed by the LAPD this morning, writing in a statement, as a result of the initial investigation, it was determined that the Reiners were victims of homicide. The investigation further revealed that Nick Reiner, the 32-year-old son of Robert and Michelle Reiner, was responsible for their deaths. He was booked for murder and remains in custody with no bail. Nick has shared his experiences with drug addiction, with rehab, and homelessness in the past, though it is unclear whether any of that came into play in Los Angeles last night. The two were discovered by their daughter, Romy. The details of the case remain scarce and are still developing, but regardless, this was a horrific situation that shocked the country. The Hollywood Reporter's Brooks Barnes today was reporting this, that the night before the Reiners were found dead, Rob and Nick Reiner attended a holiday party at the home of comedian Conan O'Brien, according to 3 attendees who asked not to be named to maintain relationships. Rob and Nick Reiner got into a shouting match at the party, said one of the attendees, who recalled Rob Reiner telling his son that his behavior was inappropriate. The attendee, who did not speak to any of the Reiners at the party, said it was unclear what the argument was about, but Nick Reiner's past struggles were commonly known. So let's get into Trump's response to the news, because instead of offering condolences, as we heard at the top, and like other public figures all over the country have done, Trump posted this. This is Truth Social. A very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away together with his wife, Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness, and with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before. May Rob and Michelle rest in peace. I mean, this is something out of Animal Farm, out of fascist governments throughout history. Reiner has been, though, an outspoken critic of Trump. He told MSNBC, now MS Now, in September, make no mistake, we have a year before this country becomes a full-on autocracy and democracy completely leaves us. In a separate interview with The Guardian in February 2024, Reiner called Trump a criminal who basically lies every minute of his life. But still, most people, left and right, saw Trump's reaction as an extreme, inappropriate, and shameful way to settle their score. Trump made no mention of the actual grotesque nature of their death, nor did he give sympathy to their families. And this goes counter to what he has had his first lady fostering, which was this whole idea with be best, right? Here's Melania Trump in 2016 talking about how to be civil, how to engage in a civil way. There's the first lady.
We have to find a better way to talk to each other, to disagree with each other, to respect each other. We must find better ways to honor and support the basic goodness of our children, especially in social media.
There you go. That initiative is maybe it's getting things better in schools and in other places. I don't know. I don't have the evidence of that or for or against it. But I know one American who it hasn't worked on, Jack.
Trump's claim that Reiner was struggling is flatly dishonest. The record obliviates it. Stand By Me, great movie. The Princess Bride, phenomenal movie. A Few Good Men, classic. Misery, another classic. This Is Spinal Tap, absolutely hilarious movie. He was co-founder of Castle Rock, one of the most best distribution companies and production companies in Hollywood. He was an architect behind Seinfeld and Shawshank Redemption, 2 great shows and movies that were awesome. Calling that struggling isn't arrogance, it's malice.
Yeah, and the call is coming from inside the house.
Yeah.
So, all right. On top of everything else, he said in the Truth Social statement that Rob Reiner was struggling in his career. I mean, of all the absurdities.
Right.
So, first of all, let me read you some of his movies. Stand By Me, Princess Bride, How Sally Met Harry, A Few Good Men, This Is Spinal Tap, Misery, The American President, The Sure Thing. And by the way, that's a small list of his movies, and those are phenomenal. Maybe the best in 5 different categories of movie making.
They misspelled sure, by the way.
That's true. That's his one fault.
Right, exactly. Right. I'm going to post about it later.
Yeah, and of course he was meathead on All in the Family, which was one of the most classic TV shows of all time. But he also co-founded Castle Rock, which created Seinfeld and The Shawshank Redemption. I mean, Rob Reiner was an American icon, an institution. And so now to his political point of view, why did he care so much about politics? Why did he say those things about Trump, and why did he always try to get involved? Because he cared. He loved this country. And whether you're on the left or the right, you have to recognize that this is a brother who was a patriot and who loved this country and wanted to make it better, who loved the people around him and wanted to help. And so if you don't agree with his particular proposals, so what? So what, right? But at least you knew that he meant it. So many successful, wealthy people, what do they do with their money? Do they try to help other people? What did they do with their voice? Did they try to help other people? Or do they just go me, 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 and they just sit in their mansions and do nothing? Well, Rob Reiner wasn't like that. He always tried to help others. So in a lot of ways, he was the best of us. And to take an American icon like that and say things that Trump did. Look, even the right wing is like, what are you doing, man? This is really super distasteful. But why? Because he criticized Trump. So I don't like anyone who criticizes Trump. That's buffoonish. That is not the time for this. That's insanity. So, and Michael, last thing is, I mean, of course, everybody's noting the irony that after Charlie Kirk was killed, they said, can you believe some on the left are celebrating? It's the worst reaction in the world, etc. And good folks on the left, which is the great majority of us, came out and said, no. Doesn't matter how much we disagree with Charlie Kirk. His death was horrific, and we're brokenhearted over it. It's terrible, it shouldn't happen this way. And Trump comes out and goes, yeah, okay, now that there was a guy who slightly criticized me and he died in a horrific way, that's it. I'm gonna say all sorts of terrible things about him and borderline celebrate his death. That's disgusting.
Yeah, and also to just make digs at somebody who was just murdered, and murdered by his son. I mean, it is the least presidential thing I can remember, to be honest. And this guy's done a lot of unpresidential things, right? A president, the White House makes a statement. That doesn't happen anymore. It happens on Truth Social. You know, the White House, the president and Mrs. Trump are devastated by the horrendous news out of, and we wish the best to the Reiner family. Something dull and droll like that. That's what presidents do. And if they knew the person, even better. But never is there criticism. And if there's criticism, it's we had our differences, but at the end, you know, in the end, this is just a tragedy, you know, things like that. That is not part of the presidency. So what Donald Trump has done to the presidency, as the geek that I am about the presidency, is as devastating in some regards to compared to what he's done to the country. And I think it starts with that. It starts with what he has done to the office of the president. And I do think it's right that there are people who have criticized him today. There are Republicans who have criticized him all across the board. And people may say, oh, what does that matter? Those are what you need. You need those words, right? You need people. You need Thomas Massie to say this is disgusting from a Republican or anybody else. So it was a terrible thing, and his reaction is so disconcerting and so upset. And anybody who has met him, as I know you have and I have, I would sit in waiting rooms with him, waiting to go on air and probably in the same waiting room as you did here. But that you talk to him, and he was always curious. He was somebody, I should say always curious. My 4 interactions with him, curious. What network do you work for? What are you covering? How is this guy going to win? Is this really happening? Is this guy really going to, you know? And it's fun for me because I grew up with Meathead. I grew up with Michael Stivic on All in the Family, and so I'm sitting with Meathead and not this, you know, producer and director icon. But he's curious about politics, and it's just, you know, it's such an ugly story. Some of the details that have come out later in the day, which we're not reporting because we haven't confirmed them, make this sad and also grisly. It's just terrible, and what the president did is absolutely disgusting.
The last 2 things here, because you know the contrast there in empathy is stark too. because Rob Reiner was very curious, and I love folks who are intellectually curious. Also very warm. Everyone who met him loved him. Like, it's as warm a guy as it gets from what I've heard from others, right? And so Trump, on the other hand, no empathy at all. And I found this out today. Turns out Michelle Singer Reiner, who is, of course, Rob Reiner's wife, who was also killed, took the picture of Trump in the cover of Art of the Deal in that book. So he knew them apparently on a personal level.
I didn't know that. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's an incredible random part of this story. And even knowing them personally, and even in the most horrific way they were killed, guys, if you can't muster empathy in this context, you probably don't feel empathy for anyone. And that's a super dangerous thing for our president to have. And he proved it today, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Okay, final word. The host wins this exchange decisively. The argument is grounded, consistent, and morally clear. Trump's reaction isn't strength. It's pettiness wrapped in power. Even Republicans criticized it because this crossed the line everyone understands. Everybody needs to be empathetic. Empathy isn't optional for a president. And in this moment, Trump proved he doesn't have it. And that's sad for the person that literally runs the whole world. Thank you for watching and listening to our video. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We'll talk with you the next time we need to uncover the real truth.